Okay, when you think about ancient Judea, two groups probably come to mind, the scribes and the Pharisees. And usually we picture them as, rivals, right? But what if I told you they were actually one of history's ultimate power couples? Yeah. Today, we're diving into their totally surprising and super influential alliance.
So, on one hand, you've got the scribes, kind of the brainy, intellectual powerhouse of their time. And on the other, the Pharisees, the ones all about living out their faith, day in and day out. Looking at them like this, you'd think they couldn't be more different, right? Like they're operating in totally separate worlds.
And that brings us to the big question, doesn't it? Were these guys just competitors, always trying to one-up each other for influence? Or was their relationship something else entirely? Maybe something way more complex, even symbiotic? That's exactly what we're going to figure out. All right, so to really get a handle on how they work together, we've got to know who they were as individuals. Let's meet our characters, starting with the keepers of the written word. And this image, wow, it just perfectly sums up the scribes. Look at them. They weren't just some guys reading alone in a corner. Nope, this was a whole community of scholars, the real academic engine of ancient Judaism, constantly debating, interpreting, and working together. So let's get specific. Who were the scribes? Well, think of them as the ultimate knowledge keepers. They were kind of like part lawyer, part professor, and part archivist, all rolled into one incredible package. Their entire world was built around one thing, carefully studying and protecting the sacred laws and traditions. Okay, now let's switch gears and look at the Pharisee. See how the vibe changes? We're moving from pure academics to deep personal practice. That prayer shawl he's wearing, those little boxes on his arm and forehead, those are called phylacteries. They are not just accessories. They are powerful, visible symbols of a faith that was lived out every single day. So here's a good way to think about it. If the scribes were all about the letter of the law, the Pharisees were obsessed with the spirit of the law. Their whole thing was about how to apply all that sacred text to real, everyday life. And those phylacteries I just mentioned, they're these small leather boxes with tiny scrolls of scripture inside, worn during prayer. It's a constant physical reminder of their commitment to making tradition something you can see and touch. So you've got the thinkers over here and the doers over there. It really seems like they're from two totally different planets. But what if those differences weren't a problem? What if that was actually the secret ingredient to their power when they teamed up? And boom, that's the core of it right there. This wasn't a case of book smarts versus street smarts. Not at all. It was all about a deep, shared passion for the sacred texts themselves. That mutual respect, that shared commitment, that was the glue that held together one of the most important alliances of the era. Okay, so they had this shared passion. Great. But what did that actually look like in the real world? How did they turn that mutual respect into actual influence and power? Well, it turns out their skills were a perfect match. They weren't competing, they were completing each other. You could say the scribes provided the what, all that deep, heavy-duty textual knowledge, and the Pharisees, they provided the how. They were the ones who figured out how to translate all that scholarship into daily rituals and practices. Honestly, one without the other just wouldn't have been as powerful. So what we're looking at is this incredibly symbiotic partnership. But so what? Why does this ancient team-up even matter to us? What was the real, lasting impact of their alliance on their world, and maybe even on ours? Oh, it mattered. It mattered a lot. Because this wasn't just some informal book club. No way. Their collaboration was official, it was institutionalized at the very top of Jewish society. I'm talking about them working together in the Sanhedrin, that's the Jewish high court, and even running local synagogues side by side. They essentially became the establishment, a single, unified force that shaped religious law and community life for generations to come. You know, this whole story of the scribes and Pharisees is such a powerful example of what happens when deep, expert knowledge joins forces with passionate, dedicated action. So I'll leave you with this to think about. Where do we see that same dynamic playing out today? Maybe in science or art or even politics. Where do the thinkers and the doers team up to really shape our world? And maybe the bigger question is, where do we desperately need more of that partnership?